Turn off your lights. Make sure your doors and windows are locked. Things are about to get spooky. Several years ago, my car changed colors by Professional Ear 5923. Just stumbled across a subreddit, so I thought I'd share one of the, quite frankly, many odd and unexplainable experiences I've had over my lifetime. This would have happened in 2018. Honestly, isn't it odd that so many people have stories from that exact same time frame? Perusing the sub, I noticed that the year seems to be prominent. Anyways, I had this car, a blue 2001 Volkswagen Jetta TDI. It's the car I learned how to drive on. It's honestly didn't get as much use by this time period and kind of just sat there. But I knew that car like the back of my hand. Even though I didn't drive it often anymore, my friends and I would often use it as a sort of hangout spot as I lived in a small trailer at the time with my parents and 2 siblings. There wasn't much privacy in that place. This wasn't once or twice. We hang out in that car all of the time, pretty much nightly, as I was always with friends getting up to some sort of trouble at that point in my life. We're hanging out in the car as recently as the night before. In fact, I remember this quite well. That's why it's bizarre the next morning upon glancing outside the window of my then home, I noticed that the car was not blue, but green. I took the shortest and most incredulous glance at the thing and had to do a double take. In that moment, I experienced the most surreal feeling, something akin to deja vu, but with increased intensity followed by this wave of fear, adrenaline almost, like I just witnessed something dire or terrifying. I can't really explain my reaction now. My stomach just dropped for a moment. I called all my friends over to look at my car, and they remarked how they could have sworn it was blue as well, one of them without even me prompting to do so. I hadn't yet told him what was wrong when I said we were going to go check on my car. This is something that has bothered not just me, but everyone else I used to hang out with in that car for a long time now. We even did some digging and unfortunately found that all previous photos of the vehicle, it never appeared to be blue. It was always green. There is one discrepancy though, and it's the title. The title says the car is blue. This entire experience was disturbing in a very odd way, from the emotions it invoked, as well as the questions I still now, years later, about how something like this even happens. I've had a lot more stories to share from this exact time period as well, and I can't wait to share all of them with you as a member here. I was always told that dogs are so forgiving and that you could beat them and they'd still love you. It wasn't until my husband told me how good of a puppy I was that I realized how true that statement really was. My social security card was stolen out of my room 8 years ago and came back last week. By imrebaMcEntired. My social security card was stolen out of my room about 8 years ago. I came home from work one day and I kept it inside a safe in my closet. I noticed my room had been torn apart, the safe was busted open. This was a cheap key Walmart type safe, nothing major. And the first thing I noticed was my social security card was gone. I was so confused because I lived with roommates at the time. Those roommates were like family to me. Never suspected it was something they would have done. I eventually found out it was one of my roommate's brothers. He was visiting the house for a few days and had a history of trouble. I knew it had to be him. This is the weird part. I confronted the brother of my roommate about it one night. He was shocked and upset when I did. He admitted to me that he took it, and he said he was sorry. I asked him why he did it, and he said he was involved in a scamming ring and thought I'd be an easy target. He then said that he felt so bad about taking my personal information that he panicked and threw it into a sewer drain to get rid of it all. I was upset that he did this, but I moved past that and years went by. About 2 weeks ago, I was cleaning out my book bag that I use daily. I have 2 of my older wallets inside there with random school IDs and other things. Note, I have thoroughly checked these wallets many times in the past 8 years and have never seen it. So I pulled these wallets out and I wanted to check and see what was inside them. I pulled a stack of school IDs out and behind them was my actual Social Security card that I thought had been stolen and missing for the past 8 years. I probably wouldn't have thought anything of it after finding it more than me just finding it, although I have checked the wallet many times and the person who took it from me admitted he did and apologized saying he threw it in the sewer drain. Just interesting to me and I wanted to share it. The fortune teller said that drinking would be the end of me, so I focused on my health and quit alcohol forever. But just before I went under for a routine operation, I could smell the liquor on the anesthesiologist's breath as he asked me to count backwards from 10. The Weird Banana Peel and Clock Setting by Anonymoose. This happened about 10 years ago, but the daylight saving post from earlier jogged my memory. My husband, infant daughter, and I lived together in a small apartment. We had a clock on the wall in our living room that we never adjusted for daylight savings time. It had been an hour off for months. Rather than change it, we just joked about it all the time. We rarely relied on the analog clock anyway. Plus, eventually, it would be correct again. One day, I got home from a morning outing with my daughter, and I noticed that a banana peel was in the hall on the floor. This was very strange because we did not have any bananas in our house. In fact, we never did. I was quite startled. I sent a text to my husband and asked him if he stopped by home during his shift and possibly dropped a banana peel on the floor. He said he most certainly had not. We checked our Ring doorbell footage and no one had come into our apartment. I cleaned it up. I was feeling uneasy. I packed a diaper bag for my daughter so we could leave for the afternoon. Before we walked out the door, I glanced at our clock. The time was correct. It had been adjusted for the time change. I was startled. I checked my phone to be sure, and sure enough, the clock had been adjusted. I grabbed my daughter and her bag and left. Once we got safely to the car, I messaged my husband to ask if he had adjusted the clock. He had not. When we got home that evening, my husband thought I had been messing with him. I still can't explain what happened. My husband is not one for practical jokes, and this would be a very weird practical joke to play. I always felt like it was a little glitch in the matrix. That or something more sinister, but my brain prefers the former. I pulled my daughter into the bathroom where I was hiding, explained that I too heard my voice calling her from downstairs. She broke free from my grip and ran out the door screaming, "It's up here!" I switched places again, and this time I'm stuck, a little freaked out, by Almost-Jaded. I'm actually really glad I found this sub a few weeks ago, because if this happened without me hanging out here the last few weeks, I'd probably be handling it much more poorly. As it is, I'm merely very concerned and freaked out, but holding it together. I have posted here for a couple of weeks now, ever since I had my second serious glitch in roughly 11 years, and a friend pointed me here. Ever since that day, I've been more aware of these things, and I've made a few posts about them. Other than the big one in 2016 and December 29, 2017, I've always written the little ones off. Now, I pay attention. And the last two weird things, nowhere near the scale of the two major experiences, I posted here. And because today, I got a major oh shit confirmation that something changed. To review, if you haven't seen or heard the other posts. In 2006, I was driving through North Las Vegas and went to a parallel place where the streets were different. I eventually came back to my universe, or however you want to look at it, but it's not something I'll ever forget. A few weeks ago, the same thing happened again in a different part of town. I drove through an area I'm extremely familiar with, and everything was off, very off. An entire planned community and all its associated streets and a shopping center had vanished. And streets that don't intersect in my universe intersected because the development wasn't in the way. Again, I eventually came out of it, and going back, everything was how it was supposed to be again. The two glitches I posted since were minor. A speaker that had JBL logo on it changed to a Harman Kardon. And last night, an Uber Eats customer swore I had been her Uber driver for the airport once. And I recall details about our conversation that couldn't have been coincidence. But I've never made airport drives or even Uber passenger rides. Only ever done food deliveries. Again, very weird, but little stuff. Tonight, I just confirmed that somewhere along the line, I actually switched into a different place, and there's no getting around it. Leaving Planet Hollywood, ex-wife in the car with me, we work together. She's born and raised Vegas. I've lived here roughly 18 years now. We both know this city better than we know the back of our own hands. We're heading from Planet Hollywood to Spring Mountains Road to get to a destination in West Vegas towards Summerlin. Details so any locals reading/listening can relate and verify things. As we get to the Strip, I go straight across on Harmon instead of turning onto the Strip. She looked at me funny and asked me where I'm going. I'm either going to take the freeway or just follow Harmon west and take Valley View or Dexter. How? Why are you staying on Harmon? Why wouldn't I? She looked at me weird. So here's the thing. I'm planning to either take Herman Viaduct they built when City Center went up, over the Valley View like I've done 100 times, or take the auxiliary ramp from the said viaduct onto Frank Sinatra Access to the I-15 like I've also done 100 times, depending on traffic. Except after passing City Center, it becomes immediately obvious why she thought I was crazy. There are no auxiliary ramps from the viaduct, and Harmon dead ends just past the very short viaduct. This is not how the road has gone for the last 8 or so years of my life. In my universe, part of the city center project included a huge expansion of Herman Road through there, including a large viaduct that went over the freeway and another bridge over the train tracks that previously broke up the Little Herman Road into pieces, making it a significant thoroughfare, complete with ramps from said viaduct down to Frank Sinatra and freeway access on one side of 15 and access to James Dean Boulevard on the other. Also, I've been looking at maps and the bridge over the train tracks isn't a thing. Herman, west of the freeway, is still the ragtag little street that stops and starts several times. They don't exist, and according to the people I've talked to in the last couple of hours, never have. Except they did, for years, at least from wherever the fuck I'm from. I used them both many, many times. So yeah, a little weirded out right now. No, it's not drugs. No, it's not carbon monoxide. No, I'm not diagnosed with schizophrenia or something related. I am high-functioning autistic, technically OPDD, because I'm too high-functioning to be considered autistic or some crap. Whatever, I think differently than others and have weird emotional patterns compared to normative folks, but I made it through 40+ years pretty well so far. Everything else seems to be just as it should be, at least as far as I can tell. But I haven't gone back this time. I'm here, and Harmon Road is different. I planned to tell my husband I was pregnant tomorrow. But when my son from my first marriage went missing, my husband smiled as he stroked my belly and said, "Now we can make room for a real family." Bizarre helpful paper came out of nowhere by Sunspot5254. So I work in the mental health field as a case manager. I have a client who just got admitted to the inpatient unit, and I wasn't sure how to contact her in the unit directly, since patients have a different number. I worked here for about a year and had left in July because I was supposed to go back into teaching. Well, it didn't work out, so I started back up on this job 3 weeks ago. But I have lost pretty much all of those niche contact numbers and resources. I remember I had written down the IPU patient contact number line down, different from the front desk, on a piece of paper and shoved it in my work phone case. We have little iPhones and the leather cases that have a few slots for cards and a pocket for money. I turned that case in my old phone months ago when I had resigned, and this is a different one. I remember thinking how old and banged up it was in comparison to my old one, which looked much newer. I figured I'd call the front desk later and get the number, but I thought to myself, oh, I wonder what the last person left in here. Opening the side pocket on the case, and there was a small slip of paper with the IPU patient contact number. It was mine, my handwriting, my font, my size, and it was written on a torn piece of paper from IPU because there was typing on the back about staff expectations while on the unit. Now, don't get me wrong, I'm grateful as hell, and I don't know if I'm looking out for myself somewhere out there. But it was weird. Really, really weird. And I do not have an explanation for it. I have some bad news. Your family all died in the car crash, the nurse stated matter-of-factly, as I awoke in a panic at the hospital, desperately wanting to know about my wife and children. You've survived with retrograde amnesia though, which means you can't form new memories, or remember that we've started every day with this conversation since the accident 12 years ago. My toddler fell forward onto an open oven door while I was baking and landed several feet away completely fine. By NibblesMcGiblet. I don't think I've shared this story here, but this is why I joined this subreddit, and my daughter is 21 now. This happened when she was maybe 2.5 years old. I was in the kitchen, which was wide open to living room. Husband was sitting on the couch watching TV, half asleep. Daughter toddling around. I opened the oven door to check on the food and turned to get a pot holder out of the nearby drawer. When I turned back, my daughter was almost to me and suddenly fell forward with her hands out. I shrieked, "Oh God, help!" to my husband, and in that instant, images flashed through my mind of her landing on it, burning herself horrifically. Us going to the emergency room, her being there for a very, very long time, months. Her growing old at various stages, covered in horrible burn scars and scar tissue, limiting the movement in her hands and on her face. Her going through plastic surgery after plastic surgery. Our life became all about hospitals and surgeries. I felt I lived those lifetimes all in an instant. Then suddenly I snapped back into the present, and my husband was looking at me saying, "What?" All irritated, and my daughter was on her hands and knees at least 3 feet back from the oven, where she definitely wasn't seconds prior. I said, "She fell and almost landed right on the oven door." And he said, "She's nowhere near there," and just took a sip of his beer. I've never ever forgotten this. It was a defining moment in my parenting life, despite her being my youngest and me living through a lot. I told her about this when she was an adult and she was shocked. She didn't remember it happening, and I said, "Well, you wouldn't, because somehow you just fell down and toddlers do that a lot." And she has told me a few times since how shaken she felt hearing about it and how it haunts her now, because she feels like that timeline was somehow real and happened, but didn't. I've never been so thankful for a glitch in my life. I've never experienced anything like it, and I still think about it from time to time, and my heart jumps into my throat. I know it happened. There's zero doubt about it. It is what it is. For what he did to my kid years ago, I've had in my basement since then, being subject to the very same atrocities every single day. 2 years back, police found the real culprit, but it was too much fun by then to let this one go. And with that, our time together is coming to an end. As always, if you have a story you'd like me to narrate, there are 3 lovely ways you can send it my way. All the links are down below in the show notes for you guys. Of course, I'd like to thank my Patreons and members for all your support. Thank you guys so much. Last, but never least, I'd like to thank the writers who let me read their stories this evening. I truly love reading the Glitch in the Matrix stories. I never fully know where they're going to go and what they're going to find/see. Like finding a banana peel in the middle of a hallway and a clock fixed under normal circumstances is not weird, but when no one in the house eats bananas and that clock never gets changed, that is a glitch and worth some fear. And the one about the little toddler who fell onto an oven, and the mother lived through the whole experience, the whole life within a moment. And then the toddler was all the way on the other side of the room, like it never happened. Makes me wonder if they glitched into another reality where it did happen and glitched back out, or who knows. These stories are always so bizarre, and I'm always happy when something horrible is thought to happen and it doesn't. With a whole city losing roads, changing so you can't find the way quickly like you thought, I think I would have thought I was losing my marbles. I can see why Almost-Jaded is getting very upset about all these glitches, and I still have more coming from them. They have had a very glitchful life, and it makes for interesting stories, but it also makes me wonder how their sanity is doing. Of course, if you enjoyed these stories, hit that like button and make sure it feels it. If you're new, please subscribe and turn that pretty little bell to all notifications. And of course, I would absolutely love a comment. Tell me what you thought, what stories you like in the future, anything at all. I love reading them and I always respond. If you're listening on the podcast and are able to, please leave a review. And if you're on Spotify, you can also leave comments as well. If you'd like to help this podcast and channel grow, please share it with anyone who might enjoy it. It helps quite a bit, and I greatly appreciate it. If you'd like to help in a more financial way, like the people I mentioned before, well, I do have the Patreon and memberships. But if you'd like to do just like a tip, I do have Buy Me a Coffee, PayPal, and Super Thanks on YouTube. As always, none of this will ever be expected, just always appreciated, because I have always just loved narrating. I enjoy reading these stories to you guys, and really just hearing what your thoughts on them are, too. Sleep tight, and don't let 42 bite.